Cup 2 being led in 12th position by the 101. The 139 in 14th position, leading SP8. SP8T is the 151 in 15th position. H4 is the 600. Wolfgang Kaufmann started that car, and that is the Kramer K3, the tribute car to the valiant 1977 Le Mans winning car. Was that? It was about that sort of. It's not fully in the colours. It only has the blue over the top, in a rather more Conrad Racing rather than Kramer Racing way.
I think the colours are Kramer, but because later on Conrad went a little bit more purple. But yeah, the K3, iconic sports car of its time, and a demonstration that GT cars do have a heritage at Le Mans for those prototype fans. But we had that argument already today. We don't need to do that one again, otherwise I don't get myself in a bigger knot.
When was the last time a GT car won overall then? Do we count the Dower car as a GT car, as it was classed as that?
The McLaren in 1995.
1995, good call, good call. What about Porsche? When did they last? Oh no, that was
1998.
98. Well, that was a GT car.
It was, yes.
Against what were then called WSC cars, weren't they? That was Aiello and McNish, wasn't it?
Yes.
And
yes. I'm in VLN mode.
you start talking about. I started talking about Le Mans. It was my fault. Sorry. I started talking about Le Mans liveries, so that is completely my fault. Still 3 hours and 42 minutes to go, so plenty of time if you are doing the full stint to hold on to it and to still be out there. You're allowed 3.5 hours in the car.
Yes, we just had a shot on the other screen here of Jörg Müller talking to the TV commentators, and it didn't look to me as if Müller has actually yet been in the car. If he had been, then he was looking remarkably fresh, having just got out of the number 3 BMW.
Yes, I hate it when drivers do that. It's very annoying.
Yes.
The Golf has gone from the end of the Dottinger Höhe, and we are back to green flag there at least. As through comes the 77 Menzel and Nikov car, which is leading SP7 and is now in, I reckon, 9th position overall. It's a white and purple car, just hitting a slow zone in the first part of the Grand Prix loop with the car off to driver's left. Oh, that's that BMW. It's the H4 BMW M4. Rob Chalmers said that surely technically the Bentley in 2003 was a GTP car, so I think that's stretching it a tad, Rob. But I see what you're saying. See what you're saying. Like your thought pattern. It was a closed prototype, though, let's be honest. See, then somebody's going to argue to me that the 1998 one was a prototype as well.
We should never have opened this can of worms, to be honest. So the Jörg Müller car...
Saved by a pit stop. Moving on.
The Jörg Müller car has just had wet weather tyres taken off it, the number 3 car. Now that car that is having its 3rd pit stop.
It only stopped 2 laps ago, Paul, didn't it? Yeah. Or was it indeed a lap ago?
So, yes, it was 2 laps ago when it came in, and wet tyres coming off. So, if there was any doubt that wet weather tyre, that slick tyres are the right thing for the job, then that doubt has been removed, because the number 3 car clearly not working, and we know it was Alex Imperatori at the wheel of it, because I said I saw Jörg Müller being interviewed by a TV crew. Meanwhile, that GT4 BMW M4 being hoisted onto the flatbed recovery unit, and that car will then be removed, and more of the circuit will become green again, so we'll be able to get some quicker lap times coming in again. Last lap times coming through last time around, more than 9.5 minutes. Now pole position was at 8 minutes 10, so
Martin Rangan nearly 10 minutes, and Van der Zande 11:47, but that included a pit stop, didn't it, for Van der Zande?
Yes, on the number 8 car, 8, 3 and 7 all had pit stops on the last
if it
lap.
is Van der Zande. The M4 is a very pretty car. It's got to be a very big car, but I have to say I'm very confused by BMW's new numbering systems when the 2-door is called the 4 and the 4-door is called the 3. I find that difficult. K3 right ahead of the number 8 Haribo AMG GT, going down towards Callan-Hard and through it. It has to be said that that K3 is underneath a 991 Cup car, effectively, with a body kit. And I believe that Kramer are doing body kits for a number of 911s going back some way. I mentioned earlier on that I'd seen a 993 with that kit on, and it is road legal. Still not persuading the responsible adult that I'm going to rip the 993 to bits. I suppose you could do a lot worse than buying a relatively high mileage later model Porsche that haven't yet started going bonkers in price and banging a K3 kit on it and going racing. I'd love to see one in the Porsche Club Championship here in the UK. That would be very good. So, leaders having completed 15 laps, with rain still falling at the start-finish line. Live coverage in sound and vision from VLN 5, Radio Le Mans and Vega working together. Radio Show Limited networks on Radio Le Mans, Channel 1 and Channel 3, which is RSL Extra, bringing you the audio. We've got sound and vision as well, which I presume most of you are taking advantage of today. Cup 5 leader just coming through, sorry Paul, just coming through to finish another lap. This is the 675 Pixum Motorsport. This is the Cup 5 class, is the M235 category. It's teammate car, which was the Cayman. The Pixum Cayman had an issue earlier on with accident damage. Haven't seen that car circulating for a little while, but the lead in the Cup 5 class is nothing at all, because the 666 is sitting on the same part of the Grand Prix circuit. This is the black, yellow and blue BMW, and can see the leader in class ahead. And we've seen throughout this 2017 season that we've been covering live here that the 235i, the Cup 5 class, has been really competitive.
Very closely contended indeed, yes, and I think this is probably one of the bigger gaps that we've seen throughout the season in the Cup 5 class. Adam Christodoulou, or whoever is at the wheel of the 7 Black Falcon Mercedes, I reported that we had on the ticker a message to say that car had had an accident at Schwedenkreuz. It's still circulating. It has now been recorded on the screens. It's made a pit stop following that accident, or because it needed fuel in any case, but it's dropped from 6th place down to 8th place as a result of that accident, whatever exactly before the Black Falcon Mercedes. So no longer 6th, but now down to 8th place. So a delay, but not an enormous delay for Black Falcon. Race continues to be led by the Manthey Porsche from the Phoenix Audi and the Falcon Porsche in 2nd and 3rd places. And then Norbert Ziedler in the number 31 Porsche up into 4th place as a result, I think, of shorter pit stops, but it's certainly done the same number of pit stops as everybody else. Norbert sharing with Alex Müller, and as I say, they've got themselves up into 4th place. In the 5th place is the Haribo Mercedes, which has had a penalty or stop and go penalty already for a pit stop offence after its first pit stop. That's 6th. And then in 7th place is the leading SP7 car, which is now the number 77 car. Earlier that class having been led by the 62 Gigaspeed car, now the rent-to-drive familiar racing car of Christian Menzel and Dmitry Lukovnikov, a Monegasque driver, it says here, although his racing license comes from Latvia. So pay your money and take your choice. Anyway, Dmitry Lukovnikov in the number 77 Porsche in 6th place overall.
Yeah, and those cars going very, very long indeed on their fuel, and we've seen this before in long distance race. As the battle for the lead goes down to turn 1, and it goes back to Audi for a moment at least. But the Porsche cuts back. My goodness, we've got 3.5 hours to go, and it's like the first or the last lap. Extraordinary. So the Phoenix car got ahead for about 60, 70 metres, drifted wide on the exit of the first left-hander. The Porsche was able to hold its line and then continued back in the lead.
What is interesting to me, John, is the way that the pair of them can't seem to agree on to what the racing line is. Because they take very different approaches to the corners and lines through the corners, and as a result of that, exits out of the corners. But having said that, the 911 Porsche has now got well clear, having been threatened by the Audi following that start-finish straight. There's now 30 lengths between them as they turn down through the Grand Prix loop, through the cut-through, and then back up on the other side of the Grand Prix loop. And so the Audi at the moment having to play second fiddle to the Porsche. Those two, though, opening up the gap more and more back to the 3rd place car, which is still, I think, the Falcon Porsche number 4.
Yes. The information from timing not necessarily translating itself in the correct way to our screens here, which is another way of saying timing's not working.
Really? It just doesn't always work all the time?
Well, it's working somewhere.
Sometimes it works some of the time.
Sometimes it works some of the time somewhere, but not necessarily where we are.
Sadly.
So, dare I say it, it looks that the rain on the first part of the Nordschleife at least has eased to the point of, well, certainly not requiring the difficult conditions flags, the track difficult conditions flags to be out for the number 8 Haribo AMG GT. As that heads out onto the main part of the Nordschleife. It also seems to be, although quite a lot darker at the end of the Dottinger, the headlights of the cars are far more visible. But it is clear there, and I think for a moment we have got a full clear circuit as the 31 Fricadelli Porsche pushing hard, and that car coming through. I see why it's pushing hard, because it's got the sniff of the BMW, the Falcon BMW, just ahead of it. And that, I think, Paul, is a battle for position.
Yes, it is. That's for 3rd and 4th places. No, sorry, the
3 and the 31.
Yes, there's the number 20 Porsche, which is behind it, for 9th and 10th places.
Right, well, that would make that...
It's the Schubert.
I don't think that is the Schubert car, but I'll have a... because they've got more wiggly lines on it, on the red and white. So, a bit of something thrown off the car in front of the Falcon BMW. Of course, that said, we have had people stopping and changing tyres again, so of which the BMW was one, so he will have dropped further down the field, won't he?
Yes, that's true.
Because he had a go on wets, which didn't work for him, and rather unhelpfully, I haven't had a good view of that Porsche coming through. Now here's the 1 or 2 still coming to the end of the dotted Ruhr with wipers on, but I think that's more down to where's the wiper switch than how much rain there is out there. Three and a half hours to go, so if you've been in from the start, the driver will have had to get out by now. See what I mean? That is the maximum driving time.
2.5 hours into the race.
Oh, 2.5 into the race, yes. Yeah. 3.5 hours to go. Yes, you're right. So there's an hour left if you are doing it all in one lump.
Yeah, certainly as far as I can tell, Alex Imperatori has driven the whole race thus far in the number 3. And Martin Ragginger has been at the wheel of the number 4 car throughout.
I can't imagine the kind of concentration it takes to race through a field this big for a stint. Never mind 4 stints, 3.5 stints. Extraordinary.
I mean, you get into a groove though, don't you? But I mean, I know what you mean. It is all about concentration, but you do often get people saying, "Oh, you know, we get into this groove where we feel we know what we're doing, and sometimes with the conditions are changeable. You know where the yellow flag zones are. You know where the bits of mud and gravel are on the track." Sometimes by minimising the number of driver changes, you actually maximise the performance of your 2 drivers if they're both capable of doing three-hour stints. But it is certainly a big ask, no doubt about that.
2.70 just starting another lap is the SP3 leading Clio. A very handsome it is too in its reflective red, white and black livery. The Avia colours which it shares with one of the Aston Martins, which indeed is coming across the line now as well, which I'd love to be able to tell you where the Aston Martin is.
I think that's...
It's second in SP10, the 188 car.
I think that's the only Aston Martin in SP10.
Yeah.
Pucker GT4 car.
Yes, how is the SP8 Aston doing is the question. Martin Ragginger reporting that slicks are still the best bet. Thank you, Johannes. Are we now saying that Ragginger is out of the car then, or is that what he's saying on the radio?
It may well actually be Klaus Buckler now at the wheel of that car.
Jaeger and Adams BMW class leading, or class second place BMW is in. I've just had a flashback to a record there, but that was Jaeger and Evans, wasn't it? Zager and Evans in the year 25-25. Sorry, just where my senile old brain works, Paul. So the 666 is coming out as second place. The leading car in Cup 5 is right at the end of the pit lane. That's the Pixar Motorsport car. So first and second in the pit lane as the leader of the motor race comes around to complete another lap. That being the number 911, Porsche 911 of Manthey Racing. And the green and yellow car goes through. Grün und Gelb. Grumble. See, it doesn't work in German, you're right. Grello works.
Grello, yes.
Yes. Grelb. It's Grelb, obviously. Or Grulb. Mathieu Jaminet slated as one of the drivers in that car, along with Romain Dumas and the undoubted talent that is Kevin Estre around this place. Just like this place, Estre.
He's one of those drivers as well who's kind of improved the more he's done it somehow.
Yeah.
He didn't kind of burst onto the scene as a young man and was suddenly very, very quick, but he's kind of arrived little bit later on the scene.
And all of a sudden, having led across the line last time around, or was it the time before now, I can't remember, certainly led into turn 1, the 15 Phoenix car is 12 seconds behind the 911, and in third position, the number 8 Mercedes-Benz is very close indeed, or much closer indeed, should I say, to the Audi. So we've got Porsche, Audi, Mercedes-Benz as the top 3.
And purely speculatively, I would suggest that that's Kevin Estre at the wheel of the Porsche, the Frank Stippler still at the wheel of the Audi, although that, no, maybe that has gone to Peter Terting now at the wheel. Yes, let's say Peter Terting at the wheel of the Audi. And in the Haribo Mercedes, we should have Edward Sandstrom driving that one. So this is the car from which the onboard shots are now being shown. Edward Sandstrom, experienced at driving Audis, has driven in the past for Audi, but is also a former winner of Dubai.
In a BMW.
In a BMW.
Z4.
Z4, wasn't it? That's right.
Claudia Herken, I
is
think.
now driving the Mercedes for the Haribo team.
So you can't remember which tyres are on which cars from yesterday, but I can remember stuff like that. Can't remember if I brought my house keys with me, frankly, but...
Did you turn the iron off?
Yeah. What's an iron?
Oh.
Somebody asked me, I'm doing a survey, what model is your washing machine? I have no idea. It's a white one.
We're in danger of going off on another of these tangents, John.
In danger?
Let's go back to this Mercedes. Edward Sandstrom, let's suggest, is at the wheel. Is now up into third place, or back up into third place, despite that stop-and-go penalty. So that is good news, I would suggest, for the Haribo team. Then we've got the second Porsche, the fourth, which is in fourth place, number 4, the Falcon tyres entered car, which we are suggesting is now in the hands of Klaus Bachler. And then in fifth place is the leading SP7 car, which is still the to drive car of Dmitry Lukovich, which has been going very, very strongly indeed. That's in fifth place. The other SP7 car...
Oh, well, you've said that. That's just back in the pits again. Now, that car's not been out at the pits that long.
2 laps is all he's done, if my notes are correct.
Problem with the left rear hub.
Sorry, no, he's only done 1 stop. I think we must have misrecorded that. So this is his scheduled second stop, and also hopefully making its scheduled second stop is the Gigaspeed car, Mark Gindorf, Christopher Brook sharing with Frank Crane.
Well, they were doing some remedial work around the left rear wheel arch of that Porsche Cup car, and tie wraps being used. That was, I think, a 997 Cup car, not the 991. It didn't have the reversed rear deck on it, from my memory. So I think that means that Gigaspeed have just nicked through back into the lead in the 62 car, because they are already on the Hatzenbach.
So they've not made the pit stop on that lap, therefore.
And they're catching the Kia 3, which is side by side with one of the 235i race cars. It's still slippery clearly on the early part of the Nordschleife from the Hatzenbach. That Kia 3 looks absolutely brilliant. I know it's a much later car. That looks like it's a 991 as well. The rear lights, the LED rear lights, but that body kit still... I really like the fact that we're getting back to racing cars that look like the old Group 5 days. And for me, the TCR cars look a bit Group 5. I like that a lot. Marvellous stuff.
You might have to explain Group 5 to some people, John.
Look it up. That's what Google's for. Other search engines are available, but not as good.
No, I mean, Group 5, a great era of the 70s racing when, to be fair, prototype racing was going through, again, a bit of a fallow period, and Group 5 kind of took it over as being GT cars on hormones,
yes,
on steroids, and were extremely leery. I mean, races on the Nürburgring for Group 5 cars, and they were certainly the mainstay of sports car racing for a pretty substantial chunk of the 1970s.
Well, it goes back as far as the 1960s, special touring cars, the first generation, 66 to 69. But the one that most people will remember is the fourth and fifth generation cars, sort of from early 1970s through into the early 80s, actually. And they ended up as a silhouette formula, in all honesty. But you could still sort of pick out the cars underneath them with those huge arches. When I'm talking about them, I'm sort of talking about those later cars with the big arches. You had the Lanciers and the BMWs and the Porsches, of course, like that K3.
The Zaxby Capri.
The Zaxby Capri. Oh, be still my beating heart. And that is just going down to Callenhard. A big slide for the number 3 BMW. That's the Falcon car going past the class-leading SP7 car. That might well have been a pass for position, actually.
It would have been, because the 62 gigaspeed car is on its way into the pits, I believe, because it will be due. It's only made one pit stop thus far in the 2 hours 40 minutes we've had of the race. That car will be headed for the pits. That could again work to its disadvantage, because it will be a longer pit stop there for this Porsche, for the Gigaspeed Porsche, and that could hand the advantage back to the number 77 car, which came in a lap earlier, so will have had a shorter pit stop.
What they've got to work out, haven't they? And I suppose they must have, is whether that means they go to the end on one fewer stops, because they're pulling a lap every time, and therefore that's spreading. And does that mean then that they're left out in the lead at the end of the 6 hours, in the lead of their class? And how far up the leaderboard would they be at that, if everybody else is diving in for which might only be a splash of fuel, of course?
Yeah, I think top 10 is going to be what they're going to be aiming for. But the trick for, I suspect, the Gigaspeed team is going to be not to get to the end with one fewer pit stop, but get into the last half hour of the race, and be able, therefore, to do a true splash and dash. So to do a fuel-only, unrestricted time pit stop, and that will be the kind of target, rather than necessarily missing a pit stop altogether.
The rain, unusually, has swept across the Grand Prix circuit and now cleared there, and it's now raining quite heavily over the far side of the circuit, heading sort of Bergwerk, well, actually coming down the hill from Callenhard, right the way up to Steilstrecke, which is where the 62 car is now, the Gigaspeed car. It's still raining quite heavily as they head up the hill to the carousel, and the wiper is still required. That's the Caracciola carousel, of course. Oh, that must be awful in there. I can understand why people would have wanted wet weather tyres, because you don't really want to be on this part of the track on slicks, and that's what they're on, and it's horrible. And in fact, the Porsche is catching the Falcon tyres BMW as it goes round a slower car, but I'm sure that is down to the physics and the grip levels afforded to the Gigaspeed car by the engine hanging out over the rear axle.
And that was the BMW, of course, that had only overtaken the Porsche just a few corners.
Half a lap ago, yeah.
Less than half a lap ago. But around the twiddly bits of where the cornering advantages of the Porsche really do just come into their own. And we already know that, I mean, conditions must have been fairly marginal on the BMW, the Falcon tyres BMW, for it to go on to the wet tyres in the first place. So, they wouldn't have just gone onto those lightly. I think they'd have taken that as a bit of a calculated risk.
I wish I knew who was driving that Gigaspeed car, because they need a medal as big as the Town Hall clock. That's great driving. Very, very progressive, very gentle inputs to everything, including the steering wheel. Not wiggling it about too much, not getting on the power too hard, not braking too hard, shifting down at the latest possible time so as not to risk locking the back wheels. This is an absolute demonstration of how to drive in bad conditions, and the conditions running down through Flansgarden towards the second carousel, bad enough for the marshals to put out the slippery surface flag. So the rain has swept around the far side of the circuit. Actually, he's not quite that far down at the moment because he's not going as quick as I would. Now he's coming down into Flansgarden and the Stefan Beloff S's. But, and it's getting drier. So yes, it's swept across the circuit.
Frank Kraling was the driver who started this car. Mark Gindorf and Christopher Brook, the other two drivers. And I don't know which of them, whether the order I've got here is the driving order or whether it's would have been Christopher Brook going in ahead of Mark Gindorf. Yeah, good drive nevertheless is to stay in the Gigaspeed Team Get Speed performance Porsche. But certainly the track not necessarily dry underfoot, but not raining onto it, so opportunity for a dry line to emerge pretty quickly. And of course that's the trick with 10 minutes or so separating each tour. It does take a little while, and the conditions quite easily changeable from one lap to the next. Meanwhile, up at the front, Peter Terting at the wheel of the Phoenix Audi has got back to within 8 seconds of Kevin Estre, although whether Estre stayed at the wheel through the second pit stop, that may well mean that the 911 has shifted on to Mathieu Jaminet now, so it may well be Peter Terting trying to close in on Mathieu Jaminet.
If that is Christopher Brook, and that is the Christopher Brook I'm thinking of, he's quite an experienced driver, German from Cologne, and has done Blancpain and done the Nürburgring going back as far as 2011, was 5th in 2011 and 6th in 2012 in GT3, so he knows his way around this place. Formula Renault, Porsche Carrera Cup, the old LMS, GT Masters, FIA GT and VLN amongst his career highlights, and I had a feeling that that was Christopher behind the wheel there. A very impressive piece of difficult conditions driving. Ironically, of course, now there's full sunshine on the start-finish straight and all the way up to Arenberg and beyond. Waiting for the leader to come back around again and complete the next lap.
Yeah, so 8 seconds separates the Manthey Porsche from the Phoenix Audi in second place. Third place, still the Haribo Mercedes, a 17-second behind the Audi. So it's Porsche, Audi, Mercedes, first, second, and third. Another Porsche in fourth place being the Falcon car, which is a further 6 seconds. 6 seconds behind in fourth place. And then fifth and sixth is where we get the first of the SP7 class cars, although we're expecting the number 62 class leader to come into the pits this time around.
Yes, they were the other way around as they came past at the end of their 17th lap, but the 77 car pitted. So that's allowed the number 20, it's the Claudia Hurtgen car, up in the 7th position overall. Because with the length of the lap here, we do have a lot of cars still on the lead lap at the sharp end of the field. Cup 3 leader just gone past the start-finish line as the 979 Porsche Cayman. Fairly standard looking car with the GT4 style rear, the curved rear spoiler. That car on the Grand Prix circuit at the moment. Paul.
62, that Gigaspeed Porsche didn't pit according to the screen.
No, he should be able to do one more, shouldn't he? Because he got one more the first time, which puts him one more, and then if he gets one more this time, that'll put him 2 more, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I do. Yeah, so he did 9 laps in the first stint, and he's now on his 10th lap of this stint. So given that the 9 laps of his first stint included the formation lap,
there you
10
go.
laps could make the difference.
Yes.
And the SP7 class cars didn't have the reduction in fuel capacity that the SP9 class cars did, so they still run to the original regulation for them. Although I still think doing a 10-lap stint, I need to look up the lap chart from the previous race, but 10 laps then for the SP7, very good going indeed. It's, at least according to my lap chart here. Hopefully it doesn't all turn sour for him.
I still think that buying a couple of iterations back Porsche Cup car is a very good way of going endurance racing. We've seen it at the Hankook 24 Hours in Dubai, where those cars have led overall for various parts of the races, again because of the fuel formula that's used there, but also, you know, you put the there is a couple of good kits that you can put on for either to change to paddle shift and bigger tanks, etc. It's a really good way to go endurance motor racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've often said that that would be your way to do it.
That would be, if I was buying my own car rather than being employed to drive somebody else's, then I would. That's what I would be doing. That's my lottery win.
Klaus Bachler going great guns in the number 4 Falcon Porsche. He's actually the quickest car out there at the moment. He did an 8:34 on his last lap. Now that might be because he wasn't so affected by yellow flag zones as the others, but up at the front, the Peter Terting Audi took 3 seconds out of the lead of the Manthey Porsche on that lap. Again, 3 seconds, you've said this already, John, on a single lap may sound like a lot, but it is not actually necessarily the end of the world and doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a huge problem or that you made a huge mistake. It may just have been either an unfortunate yellow flag or a position where you got yourself behind a group of cars that were having their own little battle, but the battle is on again for the lead, and once again, John, it's the Felix Audi ahead of the Manthey Porsche
as they come to the end of what is their 19th lap here at VLN 5 live via radiolemans.com in sound and vision and on RSL Extra, part of the Radio Show Limited network. Paul Truswell and John Hindhaugh. This is an absolutely enthralling battle back on the Grand Prix circuit, and the Manthey Porsche goes to driver's left. They're side by side across the line. Nothing to choose between them there as they go down in the braking area to the first corner. They're both moving around, still can't agree on what the best way around turn 1 is, and sweeping across from driver's left. And staying on the circuit though was the Manthey car. That's not always been the case down there for people who've tried that wider line, but pulls out a huge 10, 15, 20 car advantage. And it does seem to me as though the Phoenix car just didn't try and dispute that coming into turn 1.
I think the Porsche gets a much better takeoff, much better grip, and getting exit from the corners, so just able to put the power down a little bit more effectively than the Audi does. But you're absolutely right. The gap, though, having been 8 seconds, or it was 12 seconds the previous lap, came down to 8 seconds, and the Peter Terting, the Audi, had got itself into the lead of the race, but then the Porsche comes back and I suspect is going to be scored as the leader across the line when the timing system catches up with itself.
Well, that's extraordinary how those cars make similar lap times in such different ways, isn't it? And that's what we love about GT racing. So waiting for Van der Zander's car to come through, the number 8 Haribo car. Before that, the M235 Cup Class 5 leader comes through, the Pixar Motorsport car. It's the orange and blue machine just going through now, across the start-finish line. Still more than half the race to go, 5 minutes and 35 seconds more than half the race to go. Well, Stippler was scored as the leader at that last lap by 0.064 of a second, Paul. So it really was nothing between them as they went across the line. A coat of paint, if they were painted nowadays. And it was the Ragginger car, the number 4 Falcon Porsche, that went through in 3rd position.
Yeah, that's Klaus Bachler.
That's Bachler.
With that car, and that car has, as I said earlier on, was going great guns in Buckler's hands.
Well, he just got about half a second ahead of the 8 Haribo Mercedes as they went across the line. So the end of that last lap at almost half distance. It'll be under half distance next time they passed us. It was 15 Audi, 911 Porsche, 4 Porsche, 8 Mercedes-Benz. Then I think it will be the 3 BMW. And then it's either the 62 SP7 leader or the 20 of the Claudia Hurtgen car coming through, depending on whether the 62 pits or not. And I haven't seen whether that happened. It should pit this time around.
Yes, at the end of its 19th lap, having pitted previously at the end of its 9th lap.
Coming through the 134 Aston Martin is the GT8, the larger rear wing. Now, I have to scroll down to see that. 134.
35th overall.
Thank you. So how's it doing in class? It's third. No, it's not. What did I say? It was 134. Right. Second in SP8. To what then? Ah, the 139 car, which is the Jaeger and Adams car. And of course, just as I was looking that up, my timing screen decides to step away. Oh, there's hang on, there's damage to the front of that car, 134 car, to the left front. That's not allowed. Come on, chaps, keep it tidy.
This is the Schubert BMW on the screen at the moment. The
Black number 20
car. It's in 7th place overall. This is the Claudia Hurtgen, Felipe Fernandez, Larza and Frederick Niemark, the 3 drivers of that car. Felipe Larza, very quick indeed in an earlier VLN race, very impressive. And I seem to remember he starred as well in the Nürburgring 24-hour race at the wheel of Schubert. Schubert BMW. This car running in the Pro-Am flavour of the SP9 class. The SP9 class running either with Pro or Pro-Am possibilities, or you can run as a team of gentlemen if you so wish. So there's kind of 3 flavours of SP9, and the Claudia Hurtgen, Felipe Larza, Frederick Niemark is currently 2nd in the Pro-Am class, behind, in fact it's 3rd in the Pro-Am class, because both of them are, oh no, 2nd in the Pro-Am class, behind the Haribo car, which is also a Pro-Am, Lucas Stoltz, Edward Sandstrom and Rengo van der Zande.
Edward Sandstrom, a very tidy driver, as we were mentioning some of his achievements earlier on. And whilst we've got plenty of M6 BMWs, there's still 1 or 2 of the old Z cars out there as well, still looking good and finding their way into new ownership and still being raced very successfully. Zorg Rennsport BMW 235 in the pit lane. That's the 695 car, one of that gaggle of Cup 5 cars that started effectively in their own group, as we're 90 seconds away from half distance. What I like about these races, Paul, is, again, the factories will be at the front of the field and making their press releases later on today about who's won and a great victory for whichever GT3 car there is. But right through the field, there will be people either having real battles with a car in class, having battles with somebody out on the track just because they're the next car in front of them, regardless of whether they're class position or overall position, or just battling with the circuit itself and saying, I just need to get my 10 laps in or my 8 laps in or however many it is for your stint. And this is going back to an earlier age of endurance racing. We're so used nowadays, and you made this point earlier on, even the 6-hour WEC races have talked about them as a sprint, because basically that's what they are, from pit out to back in again. You're flat out in all of the classes. Whereas here, there's so many different objectives as you go through the field, which I really like.
That's right, and I think, I mean, we're not in a position where we can do driver interviews here, but one of the things that you get when you listen to the drivers talking about racing around here is how much fun they're having. And yes, they're racing drivers, so they want to be competitive and do better than the other guy. But a lot of it is also just about, and it's difficult to explain this to people who don't get the fun of driving a car fast, but for some people, driving a car fast is fun, and the challenge of taking a corner at the fastest speed that it can be done. I don't know if you've read Motorsport magazine this month, but there's a great piece in there from Dickie Meaden driving an entirely different car. It's a classic Formula 2 car. But the experience that he has, and he's able, because he's a wordsmith, to put it into words very, very well, of driving the car fast. And he gets this experience of how you do it. And it's great to read. But there's some great proper racing driving going on at the front of the field there. 3 abreast for, what's that, 2nd, 3rd and 4th places?
I think that's for the lead.
That's for the lead overall. No, the Stippler car is ahead of these 3.
No, Stippler car's behind them.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, so just saw a flash of blue and white behind them.
Okay, so this is the battle for the lead, and it's back to the Falcon BMW that leads the race then.
Well, that is extraordinary if that is the case. The Falcon car hasn't lost a lap, has it? Says Hindhoff.
No.
So this is the Falcon Porsche lead. Yes, Falcon Porsche going into turn 1 now, the number 4 car, ahead of the 911, behind it the number 8 Haribo Mercedes-Benz, and I'm pretty certain that behind that, in traffic, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, I was sure that I saw the Stippler car further back, and indeed that is correct.
Yes, which is now Peter Terting, of course, in the Phoenix car. We call it a Stippler car because that's how it's been displayed on our screen, but this is Klaus Bachler, and
half distance and 3 cars battling for the lead.
3 hours into the race. Klaus Bachler, terrific drive from him, because I mentioned it a couple of laps ago, he has been pushing harder and lapping more quickly, and I wasn't quite sure whether it's due to traffic or yellow flag zones, but he's got there on merit. He's got the Falcon car into the lead of the race. Maybe the tyres, the Falcon tyres on the Porsche, just suitable for these mixed conditions, but he's leading the way from the Michelin-shod Porsche and Mercedes behind him. 911, whether it's Kevin Estre still behind the wheel of the 911 car, or whether that's now Mathieu Jaminet, not sure. And then the Haribo Mercedes, which we think is Edvard Sandström driving that. But those 3 cars having a tremendous battle as they turn out through the final corner of the Coca-Cola turn onto the Hatzenbach, onto the Nordschleife section, still slotting their way through the back markers. And is it still damp out here? It's no windscreen wipers going, but the track is certainly a darker grey.
I think it's starting to rain again on the start-finish line. It looked like we were getting another sprinkle, and that's before the rain has really cleared on the far side of the circuit. So what we've got, Paul, I reckon, is a damp track all the way around. Damper in places, he says, not really getting myself...
Degrees of dampness, that's fine.
I think there must be degrees of dampness. I don't think I'm stamping my authority on getting a weather forecasting job here. Damp with more dampness in places. I'm not sure if that works, but I think that's the best way to describe it at the moment, as they now climb towards Schwedenkreuz and Arenberg. They will be happy that there's no traffic in sight for the moment, but at the top of the foxhole they're going to have to go through more traffic. They're still being very careful. If the engine note is anything to go by and the braking distance is anything to go by, Paul, they are still, if not tippy-toeing, at least they are feeling for grip at the top of the foxhole, going past one of the BMW 235i's, now going through past the number 54 GT4 Mercedes-Benz. That's the dark grey and off-white coloured car. The dark grey and yellow is the 52 car into Adenauer Forst now, and it's really, really tricky for the big Benz. The GT3 car just losing the back end there, and a bit of corrective lock being put on by the driver of the Haribo number 8 up towards Metzgerfeld. Very quick end now. He's massively off the throttle there, so that again is just telling me how careful they're having to be. And those three, having been pretty much together across the line, have now spread out through the traffic, and the two Porsches seemingly making the best of the more difficult, the damper of the damp conditions.
Yes, and this is where you have to, as a driver, not to get sucked into the battle, but to focus on what you're doing, because what you don't want to do is to get sucked into the race and suddenly find yourself splattered against one of the barriers. Clearly, if it is Sandstrom at the wheel of this Mercedes, he's having his hands full of keeping with all four wheels pointing in roughly the same direction, or the car going in the same direction as its wheels are. Doesn't happen when it goes sideways. And we are seeing a little bit more caution then from the Haribo car as it loses ground to the Manthey car. And of course, remember, ahead of the Manthey Porsche, ahead of this, is the Falcon tired Porsche. So it's Porsche, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, the top five now, with the leading BMW being the Schubert car of Felipe Larza, if it is he, sharing with Claudia Hürtgen and Frederick Niemark. That car leading BMW in 5th place. The car from ROWE Racing having retired, number 99, very early on at the end of the first hour, when Philippe Eng had a problem out on the circuit.
Is that VW Corrado coming out the pits?
Number 624.
I think it is, you know. Corrado VR6 in proper Pioneer black and red colours. 624 car. Very, very handy looking car.
Jürgen Freiberg and Norbert Kraft at the wheel of the H2 car. And
it is a Corrado, isn't it?
It is.
Slightly changed front end to accommodate some different light clusters there, but waiting for the leaders to come through, and the Falcon Porsche has cleared off on that last lap. They've done a really good job. The Falcon BMW has dropped down, having had to take an extra pit stop, holding on to a top 10 place though, having taken that extra pit stop because they tried wet weather tyres, which lasted for a couple of laps before they had to come back in and change from them. If I think back to my ALMS days, Falcon did a very, very good intermediate, and they also had slicks that didn't mind the rain too much.
I think it's the latter which is important here. It's the slicks that don't mind the rain, because you don't have intermediates in the VLN. I don't think the intermediate tyre is allowed.
The first couple of wins that Falcon took were on wet tracks. They had a good wet and a good intermediate, I seem to remember. Then they took a dry weather win as well, and they were running a Porsche, of course. That was a GTLM spec, GTE spec Porsche. Seeing a lot more Caymans on the VLN entry lists now, as those cars are becoming firm favourites with privateer teams, and the 3 BMW just going through the intermediate hairpin. You don't go all the way down the hill on this version of the circuit. You do use the first part of the Grand Prix track as the Grand Prix cars do, so not the same as the 24-hour, but then there's a link halfway down the hill, the short version of the Grand Prix track, which means you don't go all the way down to what I still want to call the Dunlop hairpin at the bottom of the hill.
I think it's still called the Dunlop curve.
Oh dear, KTM.
KTM's has come to rest just at the start, finish straight, isn't it?
I think it's heading out onto the Hudson back, actually. Yeah, that's the old pit lane on the right-hand side. It was the lurid green car, which I think is a 926 car.
It was. The Isert Motorsport entered Crossbow of Arnie Hoffmeister and Freddie Bart, the other driver, but not sure who's at the wheel at the moment. But that car clearly stopped with a problem just in the entrance, as Don was saying, to the Nordschleife.
I like this. At RSL_studio, not right away, has said, surely the degree of moisture present on any given corner is best described as damplitude.
Dear.
That's going into the dictionary. Very good. Like that a lot. And well done to Alexander Orkin for his family achievements this weekend. daughter Orkin, scoring 2 tries against Scotland in the internationals. Well done. Good to know that Alex has pulled himself away from family to watch a bit of motor racing as well. 21 laps completed after 3 hours and 9 minutes, and the leader has gone round, whilst into the pits comes the second place Porsche. So the faulted car continues onto lap 22, as does the Mercedes, or the AMG GT, should I say. The Stolt Sandstrom and von der Zande car, 16 seconds in arrears now from the leader, who is already at the hairpin on the Grand Prix circuit. So the number 4 goes through and leads after 21 laps.
Well, that's only 6 laps for the Manthey car. Now, on the previous stint, he did 8 laps, so that might be a problem for Manthey. Has he decided to go to wet tyres, or is it a problem on the car? Don't know. We're not seeing any shots of what's going on in the pit lane, but certainly a little earlier than we would have expected. I would have expected the Manthey car to come in. Of course, coming in early means that any work you do has to be done that much more quickly.
True.
So it may turn out to be a masterstroke by Manthey, because he may be back timing now from the end of the race to try and work out where he can have his shorter pit stops. But you're absolutely right, John. The Falcon Tyres Porsche has stayed out, and that will enlarge the lead that he has between him and the Haribo Mercedes in second place.
Well, bear in mind that the Haribo Mercedes and the 2 Porsches were pretty much together as they came across the line at the end of the lap, and all of a sudden it's 16 seconds in a lap. Now, even on a long lap, that's quite a lot, and that isn't necessarily just traffic. We saw the Porsches being able to do a better job, particularly in the wetter, the damper parts of the track, and the Falcon did a considerably better job than the Manthey Porsche. So that's really interesting to me to see that Falcon car has got so much of an advantage over a single lap.
And it has ebbed and flowed, hasn't it? Because
Correct.
We had a stage earlier in the race when it seemed that the 911, the Manthey car, had the advantage and was able to stretch its lead over, never mind about the Falcon tyre, the Falcon Porsche, but the other cars as well. And for a couple of laps, it looked like Kevin Estre was going to disappear off into the distance, but then it turned, flowed back towards the Falcon tyre, and all credit to Klaus Bachler, or to Kevin Estre, or to Mathieu Jaminet, whoever it is who's doing the driving. But the car itself was clearly a better one for the conditions. Now, as I say, what we don't know is what's going on in the Manthey pit. Are they trying to cure a problem now? Are they doing a routine stop? Are they putting different tyres onto the car? Different spec tyres? Are they going on to some kind of worn wet or some kind of intermediate tyre if there is one available to them? But looking at the track as we can see it out on the circuit, it's coming just out of the foxhole now for the Haribo car, and much wetter there, and you do have to be very careful. There's also a slower
white
service vehicle.
flag, yes.
White flag for a service vehicle on the track up ahead of you.
Now, easy to understeer into that car. It's another one of the Opel Mockers, because, you know, he's offline, but when you go, the slower you go on these GT3 cars, the less aero you've got, the more mechanical grip you need, and you're getting exactly not that when it is wet. Very, very tippy-toe indeed, heading up to Metzgerfeld. So we are talking, how far is Metzgerfeld around? About 8 kilometres around the 21 kilometres of the Nordschleife or thereabouts. And that Mercedes there, that AMG GT, was struggling. Hello to Airborne, the VW Komodo from his hometown.